Greetings, nerdos, and welcome to episode 2 of 78 episodes, 30 good ones. I am your red shirt level quality host, Oliver Rockside. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode. I hope you enjoyed the first episode if you tuned in to that. Thank you so much to everybody who downloaded it as well, and I hope it gave you a taste of what is to come in the next 29 episodes. Hopefully you had a little giggle with Candace and I. I know some who are present right now did, which is very, very nice to hear. But I would like to take this opportunity to thank Candace very, very much for being the inaugural guest. But guess what, kids? Guess what, nerdos? We have 2 fantastic guests today. I refer to them as muffins d'humour from the Northern Riviera of the United States. Apparently filled with great Italian restaurants and chainsaws. Heavy D is with us. Hello, Stephanie.
Hola.
How are you today?
Every day is the best day when I'm here with you two.
Oh, well, wonderful. Also, I don't know whether he's the muffin top or the muffin bottom. We won't go into that. From Parma, Ohio. Yeah, I know he's giving me a look. Just, I didn't understand the entendre situation there. I'm sorry. From Parma, Ohio, he is my music brother on the In Your Ear Holes podcast. He is Jason Book. Hello, Jason. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. This is gonna be great. I really, I didn't say it beforehand, but I love the first episode. You and Candace are so. To quote Forrest Gump, you two go together like peas and carrots, but you also go together like oil and water. So I mean, it's this great you two have so much in common, yet you're so opposite in so many ways. I love it.
When you're together, a chemistry occurs.
That's very kind of you to say. I think you're just getting me back for the muffin comment. But
that too.
Sorry about that. I have a feeling I'm going to have to edit that out.
Nah, go keep it in.
But we do have some news, people, just to let you know about a question that we had in the last episode, and that Dr. Steve Cloutier weighed in on, and it was about the wraparound. We did get an answer to a certain extent. The wraparound, I'm so glad we have Stephanie here because she can educate us a little bit here as well. The wraparound apparently was used in a terrible episode, which we'll be getting to, believe me, just not today, to differentiate one Kirk between another Kirk. And it kind of kept on going, as it were. Now, there was someone who weighed in on this as well, a Mr. Ken Herndon. I don't know Ken, but he postulated something that I thought was true in the fact that perhaps Shatner was hitting craft services a little hard and was getting a little pudgy. Now, Stephanie, as you, I'm going to ask for your sartorial inspiration on this, because a wraparound is usually a woman's garment for a dress or whatever. Is it made to be slimming?
Yes, it is made to be flattering to many figure types. Although if you think about it, if you wear a bathrobe is a kind of wraparound.
Right.
And do you feel slim and virile when you wear a bathrobe?
Well, 1 out of 2 ain't bad.
I mean, maybe that's what Shatner was going for. But yes, generally a wraparound is made to separate the ladies up top, give you a little waist below, and sort of skim over the hips, if that's something you're sensitive about.
Okay, well, thank you for confirming that. I'm firmly now in the Mr. Herndon camp of perhaps too many desserts were being had by Mr. Shatner. His well-known vanity, of course, is famous, so that is probably what we're going for here. So we've kind of conquered the wraparound situation. It reoccurs even in the episodes we're going to be talking about today. Mm-hmm. But we begin because both Stephanie and Jason are new to the show. We are going to ask them their Star Trek origin stories. And just like with Candace, of course, with Candace, we found out that she was a Star Trek fan in utero. And we begin with Stephanie. Stephanie, what is your origin story with Star Trek?
Well, I started watching Star Trek when I was a small child because it was on right after dinner, and it had a lot of the things my parents like. My parents are musicians. They both read a lot, and Star Trek is a lot smarter than other things that were on at that time. So my mom swears she doesn't really like Star Trek, but she can remember almost every episode. Just like the rest of us, it comes up in conversation. She rolls her eyes, but she was paying attention. She was getting something out of it. So we were a PBS household, and I feel like Star Trek was almost as close as you could get to a PBS style show with like the low production budget and some of the like lofty themes without actually being on public television. So if you ask my dad, he'll tell you that Star Trek also shaped my love for bald men. Apologies if I'm making you uncomfortable, but Patrick Stewart, that was like my sexual awakening.
Right.
Love Captain Jean-Luc Picard, still do.
So Jean-Luc Picard was mine was Cheryl Ladd. So yeah, same thing. Okay.
Yeah, and I like an English accent. Being from Ohio, that was very exotic and novel to me. I always did wonder, though, why, if he was from France, why he spoke like received pronunciation English.
Well, everybody in his family spoke an English accent. Mm-hmm. I mean, Jeremy Kemp was an English actor. Samantha Egger was an English actress. It was like, okay, this is the weirdest part of France I've ever been in.
Well, I actually think this is a sci-fi thing, or maybe it's like a fantasy thing. So anytime you've got a fantasy series, everyone sounds like they're from England.
Right.
Because apparently there are no other accents if you go into some kind of parallel universe. Everyone's English.
It was the same with Game of Thrones. Like everybody above the wall was suddenly Scottish. It was like, okay. And Jason, how about you?
Well, I'm going to disappoint you because my introduction. So let me start it off. I've always been aware that a TV show called Star Trek existed. But really, I did not get into it until my 30s.
Ah, so you're the opposite of Candace and Stephanie.
Yeah,
okay.
Yes, I was. It was later in life for me. I was always like a Star Wars fan. I grew up, seeing Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi in the theaters. I had all the toys. I still have them. But no, I do. They're put away, of course, but
they're put away. Okay.
But no,
we now know it's in Jason's home safe. Okay.
It's just one of those things I just never, I've seen the show, I liked it, before that, but really it wasn't until an ex introduced me to it and we did a complete watch through of the original series, Next Generation, and Deep Space Nine. And I got to say, my favorite of the series, and I know a lot of people out there are going to they're going to want to flame me on Twitter for this, but I am a DS9 fan.
Shut your mouth.
So am I. I think it's the best series that was ever done.
So I do like the original series. I like there's a camp to it that I absolutely love. But I think it is, in some cases, and we'll see this today, there is some good storytelling. I think there's some good writing of characters, if not maybe a little incomplete. But I am a recent convert to Star Trek, so I really, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
No, that's great. I mean, this is one of the wonderful things, and why I always enjoy hearing people's origin stories with Star Trek is because it does range, from birth to 32. Mm-hmm. It is one of those things that I love, and it also shows the cultural zeitgeist never went away from Star Trek.
No.
That people are joining in today. Apparently, one of the things, I watched a documentary about DS9 called "What You Leave, What We Leave, What You Leave Behind, What We Leave Behind," and they were saying that they've got a whole new bunch of people who enjoy the show because of Netflix. It's like, what is it? Let's start over again. So it's so that's great. Thank you very much for both sharing your origin stories. Shall we carb load, people?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Let's do it.
Okay, people. Now, nerdos, you know that one of the great things about Star Trek are reoccurring characters. We all love the reoccurring character in Star Trek. Of course, the most famous one really is Q. And although Q went from being malevolent to kind of this comic figure through all of his visits, I think the fact that John Delancey is just such a great actor that it just kind of made this. Now, I am a Q fan. I am more of a Weyoun fan. I love Weyoun. He's just so snarky. So there's been some good ones. Weyoun is great one. Remember that the same actor who played Weyoun played Shran in Enterprise. That was really good. Barclay, never a fan, but a lot of people seem to like Barclay. I don't know why. I would say that the two weakest were Sela, who was, of course, Denise Crosby, blonde page boy do that was just ridiculous. Adding to the fact that her presence made absolutely no sense in story, and the fact that it was Denise Crosby, who was a terrible actor. Also, I love Wallace Shawn, but if I ever see the Grand Nagas again, I could live without that for the rest of my life. But those two don't really compare to Harcourt, Fenton, Mudd. Why? I'm just why. So we're going to carb load today with the two episodes that Mr. Mudd showed up in, and we begin with season 1's Mudd's Women. Now, we're only 6 episodes in here, kids, so we've still got problems. Number one is Spock is still being referred to as a Vulcanian. Yeah, they kind of had to work that one out. Also, Uhura's in yellow in this. It's like Uhura was being trained for command. I don't know. But that's in the yellow. That's in the Star Trek classic series thing. Red was for people to get killed. That kind of changed in TNG.
Unless your name was Scotty.
Yes. Yes. Well, we're going to talk about Scotty during this episode, let me tell you. Actually, we could talk about him now because Harry Mudd's craft he, of course, is running away from something. He is basically taking women to be wives at a planet. And so this ship that they're in explodes. They get them off. This is how Mudd and the women arrive on the Enterprise. Okay, we talked a little bit about misogyny in the first episode, and Stephanie, these 2 episodes that we're going to talk about as we carb load, they're just so anti-women in separate ways during these 2 episodes, and this one is very uncomfortable because the story was written by Gene Roddenberry, Kel Surprise. What is your view about misogyny on Star Trek, the original series, Stephanie?
Overall, or this episode specifically?
Oh, overall, and then we'll be specific about this.
I think that an attempt was made. First of all, I'd like to argue with you a little. You say, what is the point of Harry Mudd? Well, what was the point of Q? What was the point of Weyoun? Harry Mudd is the OG. He's the first rogue character, the first recurring rogue that we have on Star Trek, and I think we need to respect that. The acting's a little over the top. It's a little vaudeville, but without him, we wouldn't have our Qs. We wouldn't have our Grand Nagus. So I would like to give him some respect. I actually like Harry Mudd.
Do you?
I do.
Okay. If he says Laddie Buck one more time, I'm going to fucking scream. But I would argue back at you that the origin of Q is not Harry Mudd, and it's an episode we're going to get to further on down the line. As for being the lovable rogue, is he lovable?
I think so.
Okay. So
I think he's likable. He's got a lot of charisma, and we've all known people like this. You would never trust them with anything. They would not house sit for you. You would not trust them to pick up a six-pack for you.
Right.
You would not entrust them with anything, but you have a lot of fun with them. You don't agree with them in any way, but you're always laughing. You're always having a good time. They're probably not a close friend, but in your social circle somewhere, we all have a Harry Mudd in our lives. And if you don't, ask yourself, am I Harry Mudd?
Yeah, it's like the old poker rule. If you can't spot the sucker in the room in the first half hour, you're the sucker. Okay.
Yeah, and I think that definitely there have been times in my life when I've been the Harry Mudd, and so I got a little soft spot for him.
Now, about the misogyny in this particular 2 episodes, do you have a strong feeling? Because it makes me, it was very cringy to me.
I think that they, like I said, they made an attempt. So there was definitely a point in this episode where Kirk, of all people, asks the women if this is what they want, is to be wives. Like, he is checking in with them for consent. And I don't think we saw a lot of consent on TV. I don't know. I was... this was well into reruns by the time I started watching it in the 80s. But at the time when it came out, I don't think people really asked women if they cared if they became wives or not. And here was Kirk asking that of these women. So, yeah, the premise wasn't great. The whole weird thing where if they didn't take their sexy pills that they became what the men called homely, even they just looked like women without a lot of makeup on. To me, they still looked fine. That was a little over the top. I don't really get the point of that, but I think that there were some points that they tried, and I respect that.
Jason, I'll get to you just in a sec, just because I just want to kind of go along with the story just for people who haven't seen it. And again, why? The Harry Mudd, of course, is carrying these women to be wives, and there's some secret that's all about this. And as Stephanie pointed out, it's the fact that he is feeding them what he calls the Venus drug, which basically look like Flintstone gummies, which makes them appear younger, which becomes a problem as we get to the end. So this is the big secret of this particular episode, that they are being fed drugs. Now, Jason, first of all, we have to point out that Bones is completely perving out during this whole episode.
They all are.
Well, Scotty's a little bit more subtle on the perving, but Bones is like, I'm out here, It's like, oh, that was, apart from the topic and subject matter about measurements, measurement for measurement, like that means anything. That was one of the cringy points of this as well. Did you find redeeming quality as Stephanie did in this particular episode, Jason?
So the way I described it to Stephanie, this is after, the next day after we watched it. Basically I said it's like Roddenberry didn't know what feminism was. So he went to every man at CBS to ask them what feminism was, and then they just he decided, okay, I'm just going to combine all these definitions into one and, see what we get. And you get this episode. It was very
I just think it's cringy.
It is, but if you look at it from the lens of how it started next to how it's going, I do respect that they tried. It was still awful. It was still all over the place, but it was more than a lot of things we're doing.
I have a note here. It says if I'm Spock, McCoy, and Scotty, I'm keeping these women away from Kirk.
Yeah, I mean, that's funny you say that, because the least pervy of all of them in this was Kirk. I'm like, now we know we're only 6 episodes old. It's like. Yeah,
I do have to say, so Mr. Farrell, who is the or Lieutenant Farrell.
Yeah.
When they first show him on screen, he's the co-pilot, I guess, with Sulu. To me, it looked, I'm like, did he have some bad mayo? Because he had this look on his face like, he just had something really bad from craft services.
Yeah.
I also had to say, at first, Harry Mudd, when he's first introduced, he looked like a cross between Captain Jack Sparrow, Crocodile Dundee, but he sounded like Lucky the Leprechaun.
Yeah, again, we had an accent challenge here because 1 minute he's Irish, the next he's English.
Then he was Australian, and was that because he was pretending to be the other guy? Like, was that a character choice to be a guy who is bad at accents pretending to be another guy?
Oh, so you think that Leo Walsh was Irish? So
yes.
Harry Mudd. Oh, that I don't know, but it was all over the place. We should point out that Harry Mudd is played by a character actor named Roger C. Carmel, and he was also Colonel Gum in Batman 66.
Oh, wow.
So I guess the messy last names apparently follow him. So while rescuing Mudd and these three women, the Enterprise blows out all of its dilithium crystals. And so instead of going to where Harry Mudd was going to take the women to be wives, they go off to a dilithium mining planet to get repaired. And as it turns out, there's lonely, weird men there too that need wives. And so the deal is that these three women will now live with these men. This is where the Venus drug thing is revealed, but it's weird because I missed the part where Kirk found out about the Venus drugs. They go from they don't know about them to all of a sudden Kirk saying that this is what's kept them young and beautiful, and when he hands over the fake ones, right? Did I miss a spot there?
Don't they get scanned in the medical bay or something, or the one of them gets real tired and passes out because the Venus like she's in withdrawal, and I think that's how they figure it out because they visit him in his his prison bay, and I think with that back and forth they kind of figure out something's happening.
Okay, it wasn't really very clear.
I'm trying to figure out. So the Enterprise computer is supposed to be super advanced and stuff, yet somehow it couldn't detect the pills while he was being beamed aboard. I mean, you would think I
know, but we are 6 episodes in.
Yeah, I know.
They're still trying to find themselves. But that part didn't make much sense. And the big whopper of the episode that didn't make any sense to me is the fact that when they give one of the women a fake, like a placebo of this Venus drug, it fixes her. Mm-hmm. And it becomes this kind of mind over matter thing. And I'm like, I don't think that's how mind over matter works.
It's actually funny you said that because just recently there was an article in one of the, long form journalism online publications. And it was like, if you want to be hot, you have to act like you're a hot girl. Like that will make you hot. And I immediately thought of that article. This was just in the last 2 years. I thought of that when the moral of this story turned from maybe don't trick people into marriage into the real friend is confidence.
Yeah, it was, but a placebo doesn't do that. Like, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And now we know that Stephanie gets her monthly issue of Cosmo. I'm sorry, just think you're hot, just screams Cosmo. I'm sorry. But this episode was a dud. Just now we are going to forgive them a little bit for being 6 episodes in because they are kind of finding their stuff still. I get it, but boy, this was bad. And all the talk about beauty over character and measurements and everything, the whole thing was, and McCoy perving out, the whole thing was just terrible. However, that was basically The Godfather compared to the next Harry Mudd episode, which is a fucking fever dream. I mean, I am like, what is when I rewatched this, I had no recollection it was this bad.
I loved the
Oh
second
my
one.
God, Stephanie.
No, not because it was good, because it was ridiculous. I mean, it had everything. It had sex robots. It had improv exercises. It had nagging wives. It had doppelgangers.
So in this particular episode, Norman, who turns out to be a robot with acne scars, I might put out, I may suggest, which is weird. Norman takes over the Enterprise and directs the Enterprise to where now Harry Mudd has escaped jail from our first episode and gotten lost while escaping and finding this planet filled with robots that kind of self-create on his whim. I can't even describe what this... I think it starts out as kind of a very 1960s type episode. You know, robots, you know, they all look the same, blah, 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 blah. There's central command that has to be destroyed, all that kind of stuff. But then in the second half, and I'm not kidding when I say this, people, we get pantomime. It's so bizarre. And
it was Stepford Wives meets Wrinkle in Time.
Oh, well done, Stephanie. Very good.
I think they're, and I don't. I think this was trying to be based on the Twilight Zone episode number 7 Looks Just Like You, which is a robot episode.
Okay.
Which everyone, it's a perfect, or it wasn't really robots. It was, people go in because they're ugly or whatever, and then they get recreated into like one of like 9 different models of people, or one of 10 different models of people that are considered perfect. And I think they took that as the germ for this episode. I will say I'm with Stephanie on this one. I thought this one was. I don't use the word whimsical often, but I think it was a whimsical episode.
Oh my God! Are you kidding me?
Well, I have a soft spot for the whole conquering the overly logical with absolute illogic. So, I mean, I love that trope.
I'm sorry. This turned into a Monty Python sketch. I mean,
which I kind of, come on.
Oh, God.
It was Oliver, I'm surprised you feel that way, because you said that you've been involved in theater before. Mm-hmm. And at the end, when they're basically doing improv exercises, particularly when they're throwing the ball at each other, mm-hmm. I'm surprised you didn't have a little chuckle to yourself thinking about watching actors, or maybe even doing that yourself. That didn't give you like a little happy nostalgia.
No. I would think that if there's different forms of improv, perhaps that may have been a different form that I'm not familiar with. But even if it was, I mean, and yes, you're completely right. I had to do things like that, like walk around with an imaginary cocktail glass and all that kind of stuff. It was in context within the scene. This makes no sense whatsoever to what they're trying.
That's the point. The point is to be illogical, so it's not supposed to make sense.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So Scotty, basically playing a flute, playing air flute, was escaped me. I'm sorry. I'm
feeling personally attacked by that comment.
I'm sorry. Send you a muffin.
I know that you expected us to agree with you that these first 2 episodes were trash.
No.
But we both liked both episodes. We were chuckling about it yesterday that the idea that these first 2 are the bad ones and the third one is the good one. I liked them all.
No, I love a discussion, so I'm just putting out what I think is good and bad. If anybody agrees or disagrees with me, that's great. I have absolutely no problem with it.
Expect to hear from Candace soon.
Yes. Oh, I'm about to get a tweet you would not believe.
We do get like in the first, actually in all 3 episodes, and I figured this out. the Kirk acting trope is basically when he's like asking questions and trying to figure it out. It's like you're basically seeing into his mind, which is a scary place because he's doing.
Yes.
That's when he gets into his like almost like his free association.
He's like a dog when you say the word cookie, and he's like, cookie, cookie.
Anyway, Harry Mudd is on this planet because he wants to get off the planet, but these robots have outsmarted him in saying that, of course, this is going to be a common trope in a lot of episodes that we do, that the aliens want to learn something from a human being. And they get kind of bored with Mudd, and Mudd gets bored with them. So the impetus of bringing the Enterprise there is to take the Enterprise, the robots hijack the Enterprise and then spread themselves across the galaxy so they can serve more interesting people. And I can see that is plausible. But the way they figure this out is the old let's confuse the Central Command so it blows up routine, which of course is another Star Trek trope, which we're going to cover again. It's just that in all seriousness, one of the things that, and Stephanie, you pointed this out in the earlier episode, that the women were given some consent or some agency with their lives. Here, no. They are sex toys. That's all they're there for. This is Gene Roddenberry's wet dream. And make all these different models of women that, will say yes to anything. And so that's the misogynistic in its own stretch of the imagination. Of course, the central computer, of course, has to be a man. It can't possibly be a woman. So there's problematic things in this as well. And again, we're looking at it through a 55-year-old lens, and we have to take that into account. But this episode just blew my mind. I mean, it's not the worst episode by any stretch of the imagination, but it's awful.
I thought that for sex robots, they were actually dressed fairly modestly.
Yes, only backless.
Yeah, in the first episode, there was a lady just basically walking around in a poncho with no pants.
Oh,
and
Magda,
I told Jason,
Magda.
Yeah, if I had to tag myself, that one would be me. But in this episode, they're wearing they're covered. It's less sexy.
Yeah.
They've even got tights on, which is, like not what I would consider a sexy garment.
Right. Although I appreciate Stephanie's appreciation for Mudd, I don't get it. He may be the OG, but he's the OG for the Grand Nagus. He's just ugh.
Did you catch? He got a chance to do some physical acting in this, which it's sort of in the vaudeville section at the end when Kirk is threatening him and sort of pushes him up against a wall. I looked at the two of them and I was like, I don't buy this because the actor playing Harry Mudd is like twice Kirk's size.
Yes.
And he gets to fall down and tumble a lot. And I really had an appreciation for that. And I wondered if that actor's done that in other roles. I thought it was well done.
I don't know. I don't know a lot of his work in the 60s. I think he died young. But did anybody else notice that Norman's stunt double looked nothing like Norman?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
They didn't even try with the stunt double.
Yeah. And in these two episodes, Shatner's toupee has a widow's peak. Again, no idea.
Was he wearing a toupee that early on?
Oh yeah, that's a lid. Remember, bald men, we have liddar, we have wigdar. Oh yeah, he was rocking, and so was Walter Koenig.
I guess I didn't notice. One of the things that I do appreciate about the original series is that, we're seeing the remastered version. So we can see all the thick, heavy stage makeup on everyone. And it really highlights, what they've done to Leonard Nimoy's eyebrows. And you can see acne scars. But when they close up on young William Shatner's face, that man is beautiful. You can tell why he's the star of the show. And I'm always so distracted by the fact that he looks good even in pancake makeup that I don't look at the hair until much later on when he's become so much of a parody. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, you should watch an episode of TJ Hooker because, as I mentioned in the last episode, that is peak Shatner 2000. That is unbelievable.
Okay, so we've carb loaded. We've had an insulin spike. It's time to bring it down a little bit with a little bit of protein. Mm-hmm. And in this particular episode, we are going to talk about season 2's Wolf in the Fold. And again, we're not to the great yet. We're at the good. Mm-hmm. This was written by Robert Bloch, who famously wrote Psycho. He also this is one of 3 Star Trek original series episodes he does. Another one that he did is absolutely awful. Again, we're getting to it. But this one, I have a soft spot in my heart for this one, mainly because it's about Jack the Ripper.
Gee, and I'm shocked at that.
I know. And any true crime nerdo knows that we have 3. It's kind of the holy trinity of true crime. One is the Black Dahlia, the other one is Zodiac, and of course at the top of the list is Jack the Ripper. So this idea that Jack the Ripper was an entity fascinated me at the time and still does. I think it's a great idea. Also, we should let you know that the person playing Jack the Ripper in this is a guy by the name of John Fiedler. John Fiedler was the original voice of Piglet.
Oh, yeah.
In Winnie the Pooh, the Disney version. Now, this was after this. So it wasn't like they said, let's get John Fiedler because he has his innocent voice and, as Piglet, as the actual criminal in this, so to speak. So it was after. But the pairing makes it very odd. Now, the other thing is, and I'll say my bias right out front, this is basically Star Trek Law and Order. This is a Law and Order episode. Mm-hmm. I really enjoy this. I love the idea of it. Scotty perving out on somebody is because usually Scotty strikes out, in a lot of these. Mm-hmm. And in this particular case, he stabs out. Yeah. I really enjoy this episode. What were your thoughts about this, Jason?
I liked it. It was a, it was a whodunit, but honestly, I kind of figured out whodunit pretty quick.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's not hard to tell. And also, John Fiedler was in probably one of my favorite Twilight Zone episodes, titled "The Night of the Meek."
Okay.
It was a Christmas episode with Art Carney as drunken Santa Claus. It's just one of those. It's one of those feel good Twilight Zones. Like it wasn't a real. It wasn't one of those episodes where the bad guy is gets it in the end or anything. It was John Fiedler plays the store owner who fires Art Carney, but at the end gets the present that Art Carney asked, what would you like? And he said something like a 12-year-old bottle of single malt. And right. Art Carney hands it to him, or he finds it somewhere, and, he invites the police chief to, get drunk. So it was, it's a good episode. And the thing is, if I'm on this, if I'm on your podcast enough, we'll probably end up, I'll probably end up making more Twilight Zone references throughout.
That's okay. That's perfectly okay. Stephanie, how did you feel about the episode?
Well, 3 main points for this episode for me. And the first is that it felt like 2 episodes. So the first one was very Jack the Ripper heavy, atmospheric. It was on a planet. I always like when they're on a planet because they get to play with sets and things.
Right.
But the crime happens. Then they go to the ship and, you go from like the passionate that experience to the logical where they're doing the whole kind of courtroom thing. So I thought the writing was interesting that way. 2, I liked where they were going with this idea that Jack the Ripper, I didn't see it quite as literally that he was an entity or a spirit, but rather the idea that there is a malevolence in some humans that grips them and they're almost like a different person. Right. We read these stories about people who commit these atrocities and someone always says, oh, he was the nicest guy. I didn't see it in him. So I like this idea that there's something dark that could be lurking in any human, regardless of how they lurk or sound. And it was also, this is actually a 3rd and 4th thing. So the 3rd thing was on the planet, it's a planet that has a low crime rate. So this is why they're quick to jump on Scotty, thinking that he's the perpetrator, aside from like all the circumstantial evidence. But the prefect says something like, we don't allow jealousy because jealousy is the motivator behind a lot of violent crimes. And I thought, oh my God, how true that is. Not just crimes against women, crimes of passion, but also when you think about like theft, things you might do for revenge, like jealousy is very powerful motivator. And in the 60s, they were calling that out. But the fourth and final thing is that every time something goes wrong, like if my plumbing or my computer, I always say it's ghosts. And Jason sort of like laughs at me and tries to, well, actually me. But in this episode, it literally was ghosts. So I never want to see that eye roll again, Jason. There it is.
See, a podcast that builds relationships. Always. We should also point out that there's, again, Leonard Nimoy and psychics. It's like when you bring this up, it's just like it's cannon fodder.
It's In Search Of all over again.
Yes, we do have a psychic. We have a space psychic. Cybo, Cyba,
I think.
Cybo, yes, with an extremely huge bun. I'll just leave it at that. And she gets offed as well. So yes, we have 3 women killed. I think this episode is slightly less misogynistic, except for the belly dancing, but you know.
That was the worst belly dancing I've ever seen. Having seen legitimate good belly dancing, what the hell were they doing in that scene?
Well, she wasn't even clicking her fingers together. Like she was just, I don't know what was going on.
It was not good.
It was interpretive dance. But I love this episode, and I just love the idea of it. This is also a second season episode, and I really enjoyed this just for the idea of it. And I think this is well worth a watch. Again, not great. It's good. There's some slow points during this. The ex-boyfriend and the father I thought were superfluous to the whole story. And
but you got to have a red herring and a mystery, right?
Yeah, this is true. This is true. Yes. The courtroom scene, I'm using courtroom in quotes, very Law and Order. And I really enjoyed this. And would you say that this was the best one of the 3 that we watched?
It was the most coherent storyline of the 3 we watched.
Yeah.
I do have to say, 2 episodes we have Judge Majel. Judge Judy of the Starship Enterprise.
Yes. Yes. That was not intended, but yes, we had a lot of palms on discs.
Yes.
And oh my God, the amount of floppies that they were using during this episode. It was like, I think they whipped out a floppy like every 5 seconds.
But what was the data capacity of a floppy disk? It was shockingly small when you look back on it.
I know, but in Star Trek times, wow.
Funny you should ask. I have...
If you say you have floppy disks that have Star Wars themes on them in your safe, I'm going to lose it.
No.
Okay.
I just started up an Apple II GS today, and I have the smaller, the 3.5-inch floppies, and those are about 720 kilobytes.
Okay, there we go.
I can't remember what 5.25-inch is off the top of my head, but
half of that,
something like that.
Yeah. 356 or something. Anyway, we don't know what Star Trek's floppy disks were, but they were shoving them in slots left, right, and center.
It would have to be less because the capacity has only gone up. So.
The other thing is we find out during this episode that Scotty is from Aberdeen. I have had the pleasure of visiting Aberdeen. So. Good for you, Scotty. Nice to know.
They mentioned it a lot, almost like he was telling his mom to watch that episode. Like, I get to star in an episode.
Well, I think he was talking about Aberdeen in relation to the fog and the walk that he was planning, which would lead to somewhere. I don't know. Anyway, that is Wolf in the Fold, and those are our 3 carbs, people. Mud's women. I'm Mud. I think Stephanie and Jason would give it a higher mark than I would. And Wolf in the Fold is your protein for this particular episode.
I think you are correct in, that Wolf in the Fold is definitely one of the 30 good ones. The other two are definitely not one of the 30 good episodes. The Mud episodes are, I mean, those are absolutely pure. I mean, they are sickeningly sweet sugar carbs. They're not even like rye bread carbs.
I would, if we're gonna do it that way, I would say that Mud's Women is like rye bread, and I Mud is like the sugariest thing you could ever have.
All right, so question for you both, being men. What do you think the men would have looked like if they'd taken the Venus pills? Because when the women took it, it just looked like they had more makeup. But what do you think a Venus pill would do to a guy?
They'd all look like Shatner.
They'd all grow wrap sweaters.
Well, to be quite honest with you, we do have a version of the Venus pill now, which is what, the little blue wonder is. I mean, that's basically, if you asked any man who was in his 60s or 70s back then, and they could take a pill to make them feel younger, the little blue wonder would be first on their list, right?
Isn't it interesting that for a man, the little blue pill just affects the one part of their body, but they think that's enough? But for the women, when they take the Venus pill, it affects them head to toe?
Yeah, absolutely. I would think that they would all want to look like George Hamilton. I think that would be the 60s equivalent, Oh,
yeah.
No?
Artificial tan and all?
I mean, I can't say what men find attractive in other men. That's, that's a completely different topic. But I would not want them all to look like George Hamilton.
Well, that's the other thing, is that women are much more intelligent in their tastes, and so they have much more varied taste in the opposite sex, if they're inclined to be attracted to them.
You say that, but the women chose to stay with those men, even though the men were insulting and horrible to them. At the end of that episode, I was yelling, "What the hell, Jason?" Because you kind of think they would all have learned lessons, but they didn't. She's like, "I guess you'll do. Guess I need a husband," and she stayed with them. So Are we really more discerning? I don't think so.
Yes, because remember that those lines were penned by Gene Roddenberry. They weren't penned by a woman. Although we did find out that sandblasting is a wonderful dish technique.
I thought that was handy, and I was thinking about my own cast iron pan.
By the way, if anyone, before anyone asks, no, Stephanie is not exaggerating. She did literally yell, "What the hell was that?"
I did. I was making angry jazz hands and yelling, "What the hell?" at Jason, as though he had written the episode. I had to be angry at someone, and he was the closest person.
I would not be writing this episode like this, or I don't even know how I would write this episode.
That's not how I would have ended it. And there were actually a few points in the episode where I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is taking a turn for the better." When she thanks him for saving her life, and does a favor for him, I was like, this is reciprocal. This is actually pretty respectful. I like it. When Kirk asked the women if this was something they wanted, I thought it was going well. But every time it started to nudge towards progressive, it would just take a nosedive.
Well, It was like I said, it was like Roddenberry asked all the men at CBS what their what they thought this episode should be, and they all gave their answers, and he didn't ask one woman.
Well, maybe
they tried though.
Perhaps he should have asked his boss. Mm-hmm. That may have been much more politically correct and informative. However, we have made it through without one human trafficking joke, so that's positive.
Drugs and human trafficking in the second episode. The first episode. I'm sorry.
There was a fair amount of human trafficking in both episodes.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, if you look at it, yes. Thank you so much for joining me, you two. It's been a lot of fun. Thank you for taking the time out on Superb Owl Sunday. That's when we were recording this.
It's also Galentine's Day, so as honorary
gals,
I usually call you my cuddle bros, but today I will call you my cuddle gals. Thank you for being Galentine's.
Stephanie, if people would like to get a hold of you, how in the world do they get a hold of you?
Well, you can send me whatever you'd like to at jfletch1@theshowhole.com.
Fantastic. And Jason, how can people get in touch with you if they desire?
I am on the Twitter at AlienCG. If you have weird stories, if you have weird like news stories that you want to share, at Illuminati Pod. Always looking for weirdness there. So
and please don't make muffin jokes. We've already gone down that road. It did not end well. My name is Oliver Rockside, and you can find me on two ways about this show, at Oliver Rockside or at 78 Episodes Pod. We'd love to hear from you, like we heard from some other people in the last episode. And our next episode, episode 3, we will be joined by the aforementioned Dr. Steve Cloutier. Yes, I know people with advanced degrees, people. I know. It's shocking. And we will be talking about an episode called Shakespeare on Cheesy Thespians. Join us in 2 weeks for that. And thank you again, Stephanie and Jason, for joining in the fun and shenanigans of this particular podcast.